You left your kids for a man, and now you want them back. Those were the first words Daniel said when his sister showed up at his door that night. The house was quiet before that knock. For 6 months, Daniel's life had finally found a rhythm, the kind that comes only after years of trying to do things right. At 38, he was the kind of man who believed in order, in structure, in doing the right thing even when no one noticed. He lived in a modest 2-story home in upstate New York with his wife, Lauren, and their 10-year-old daughter, Lily. Life was predictable in the best way. Mornings smelled of coffee and pancakes. Evenings were filled with board games and homework. It was calm. It was safe. And then, as it had always been in Daniel's life, peace ended the moment his sister reappeared. Jessica, 35, had always been chaos wrapped in charm. When their parents died young, Daniel became the stable one, and Jessica the dreamer. She was beautiful, spontaneous, and addicted to new beginnings. She jumped from job to job, waitress, makeup artist, photographer. Nothing ever stuck. Her husband, Evan, had been the only anchor that kept her steady. But when he died in a car accident 3 years ago, that anchor vanished and Jessica started drifting again. At first, Daniel tried to help. He'd check in, offer to babysit, send money when she said she was between jobs. But Jessica never wanted stability, she wanted escape. Then she met Ryan, a 29-year-old fitness trainer who lived for the gym, travel, and freedom. He didn't want kids, and she didn't seem to care. To Daniel, that was the first red flag. To Jessica, it was finally a chance to live again. One rainy Tuesday, she showed up at Daniel's door, her hair soaked, and her 2 kids standing beside her, Tyler, 14, and Zoe, 12. Each of them carried a small bag of clothes and confusion written across their faces. Jessica forced a smile. "Dan, I need a favor," she said softly. "Just a few weeks. Ryan got a job in Arizona, and I'm going with him. I'll send money, I promise. Once we're settled, I'll come back for them." Daniel didn't answer right away. Lauren looked at him, then at the children, trembling, hungry, unsure. Finally, Daniel sighed. "Of course. A few weeks," he said. Though something in his gut already knew the truth. This wasn't going to be temporary. The first week was awkward. Tyler barely spoke, and Zoe cried herself to sleep. But Lauren had a way of softening the sharp edges of sadness. She cooked their favorite meals, helped with schoolwork, made space for their laughter again. Slowly, the house began to feel fuller and warmer. Lily adored having her cousins around. They became inseparable. What had started as an act of kindness began to feel like family. Then the calls started changing. Jessica would FaceTime from sunny Arizona, showing off palm trees and poolside cocktails. "How are my babies?" she'd ask, her tone distracted, her eyes darting off screen. Tyler would smile faintly and say, "We're fine, Mom." Zoe would barely look at the camera. The calls grew shorter. Then, they stopped. Money stopped, too. The promised wire transfers never came. After a month, Daniel stopped asking. He picked up extra shifts. Lauren worked longer hours, and together they made it work. It wasn't easy, but it was peaceful in its own strange way. Tyler joined the basketball team. Zoe began drawing again. They were healing, but not because of Jessica. By the 3rd month, it became obvious. Jessica wasn't coming back anytime soon. Daniel received a single text that read, "Things are complicated. Tell the kids I love them." Then silence. Weeks turned into months. Birthdays came and went. School projects were done. Report cards pinned to the fridge. Life went on just without her. And in that quiet space, Daniel felt both guilt and relief. He hated himself for being thankful that she was gone, but deep down, he knew the kids were finally safe. Tyler began calling him Dad by accident one morning. It slipped out over breakfast, followed by a nervous laugh. Daniel froze, spoon halfway to his mouth. Lauren smiled softly and said, "It's okay, honey. You can call us whatever feels right." Zoe giggled, and for the first time in months, the air in the kitchen felt light again. Then came the 6th month. It was late, the air biting cold. Daniel was reading in the living room when someone knocked. 3 sharp raps, urgent, impatient. Lauren peeked out the window and whispered, "It's her." Jessica stood on the porch in a worn leather jacket, makeup smudged, eyes hollow. She looked nothing like the sister he remembered, thinner, exhausted, desperate. Daniel opened the door slowly, unsure what to expect. She walked in without asking. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaking. Daniel didn't speak. He waited. Jessica took a deep breath. "I'm here to take my kids back." Lauren froze in the doorway. Tyler and Zoe, hearing her voice, crept down the stairs. Tyler stopped midway, his eyes wide. Zoe hid behind Lauren, clutching her sleeve. Neither moved closer. Jessica forced a smile, pretending nothing was wrong. Come on guys, get your stuff. We're going home. Zoe's eyes filled with tears. But this is home, she whispered. Jessica's face twisted anger, shame, and something darker flashing behind her eyes. They're my kids, Daniel, not yours. Daniel stayed calm, his voice low and steady. No one said they weren't, Jess, but they've been here 6 months. They're settled. Maybe we should. I don't need your permission. She snapped, her voice breaking. I made a mistake, okay, but I'm their mother. The room went silent except for the sound of Zoe's quiet sobs. Lauren put an arm around her. Tyler stared at his mother, torn between love and fear. For the first time, Daniel saw it clearly. Jessica didn't come back for her children. She came back because she couldn't stand losing control. He looked at her and said quietly, almost sadly, Jess, you don't get to walk away for half a year and pretend nothing happened. Her jaw tightened. You'll regret this, she whispered. Then she turned and left, the door slamming behind her. Daniel stood there for a long time, staring at the door, feeling the echo of her footsteps fade into the cold night. Lauren touched his hand. What now? She asked softly. He exhaled, looking toward the stairs where the kids had disappeared. Now, he said, we wait, because this isn't over. And deep down, he was right. Jessica wasn't done, not by a long shot. But this time, when Jessica came back, what she wanted wasn't love or redemption, it was control. And she was willing to destroy everything to get it back. Sometimes the quietest house can turn into a battlefield. All it takes is one person who refuses to let go. The week after Jessica's return, the air in Daniel's home changed. The kids stopped sleeping through the night. Lauren kept checking the locks twice before bed. Every noise outside made Daniel glance toward the window. It wasn't fear exactly, it was anticipation. Because they all knew Jessica wasn't done. She came back the next evening, unannounced. No call, no warning, just the sound of her car tires crunching against the gravel driveway. When Daniel opened the door, she stood there with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. I've found an apartment, she said quickly, almost rehearsed. Just an hour away. I got a new job too. I'm here to take Tyler and Zoe home this weekend. Lauren set down the plate she was drying. Jessica, they just started settling here. Maybe give them more time. Jessica cut her off sharply. They've had plenty of time. They're my kids, not yours. Daniel kept his voice calm. We're not trying to take them from you. But they're in school, they have friends. Pulling them out again would just... You don't get to tell me what's best for my children, she snapped. You think because you played daddy for a few months, you know them better than I do. Tyler, standing by the hallway, froze. Zoe hid behind him, gripping the hem of his shirt. Jessica turned toward them, her tone softening unnaturally. Come on, sweethearts. Pack up your things. We're going home. Tyler's voice trembled. Mom, I don't want to move again. I just made the basketball team. Jessica's jaw tightened. We'll find another team. You'll be fine. Zoe's eyes filled with tears. Mom, please. Can we stay here? That broke something in Jessica. Her composure vanished. Stay here. With them, she hissed. You think they love you more than I do. You're just confused because they spoiled you. Her voice cracked. The words hit like glass, shattering, sharp, humiliating, and impossible to take back. Lauren reached out instinctively, but Daniel stepped between them. That's enough, he said firmly. You need to leave before this gets worse. Jessica's breathing quickened. Her eyes darted between her children, both of them staring at the floor, not daring to move toward her. The rejection was silent but devastating. For the first time, Jessica realized she had lost them, and everyone could see it. She straightened, her voice trembling with anger. You'll regret this, Daniel. You're trying to steal my family, but you'll see I'm their mother. Then she stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to make the picture frames rattle. A few weeks passed in uneasy quiet, but peace never lasted long when Jessica was involved. It started small, random phone calls at odd hours, vague promises that she'd be visiting soon. Then, one Thursday, Lauren went to pick the kids up from school and discovered they were gone. The front office said Jessica had signed them out earlier that day. Daniel's stomach dropped. He called her immediately, but every call went to voicemail. By nightfall, panic turned to dread. He called the police, but the officer's response was chillingly calm. She's their biological mother, sir. Unless there's a custody order, there's not much we can do. For 3 long days, Daniel didn't sleep. He drove to every address he knew, called every friend Jessica had, even searched online. When she finally showed up Sunday night, she dropped the kids off like nothing had happened. They needed a break, she said casually, brushing off his outrage. You worry too much. But the kids looked different. Tyler's arm had a bruise shaped like a handlebar, and Zoe wouldn't look anyone in the eye. When Daniel gently asked what happened, Tyler mumbled, "I fell off a bike." Later that night, Zoe whispered through tears, "Mum didn't even notice." That was it. The moment Daniel realized kindness wasn't enough anymore. He wasn't just protecting his niece and nephew, he was rescuing them. The next morning, he contacted a family lawyer. The woman listened quietly as he explained everything: the abandonment, the sudden returns, the neglect. When he finished, she leaned forward and said, "You've been their guardian in practice for more than 6 months. That's strong ground. Let's make it legal." For the first time in months, Daniel felt something close to relief. He wasn't powerless anymore. When Jessica received the legal notice, she showed up at his house again, this time furious. She pounded on the door until Daniel opened it. "You think you can take my kids from me with a lawyer?" she screamed. "You're insane." "I'm not taking them, Jessica. I'm protecting them. There's a difference. They're my blood," she shouted, voice cracking. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything. I just needed time." Daniel cut her off softly. 6 months was more than time, Jess. It was a lifetime for them. Her expression hardened. "You're stealing my family." The kids heard everything. Tyler stood frozen at the top of the stairs, Zoe crying silently beside him. It wasn't just a fight anymore, it was a public unraveling, a scene that tore whatever respect remained between them. Jessica stormed out again, shouting that she'd see him in court. The court hearing took place a month later in a small county courthouse. Daniel arrived in a plain navy suit, holding Lauren's hand. Jessica walked in 10 minutes late, wearing sunglasses indoors, her posture stiff with defiance. The judge listened carefully to both sides. Jessica argued that she'd simply gone through a rough patch and was ready to rebuild her life. Daniel's lawyer calmly presented evidence: school records, medical bills, photos of the children's daily life, proof that Daniel and Lauren had been the ones truly raising them. When the judge asked Tyler where he wanted to live, the boy hesitated, then whispered, "Here, with Uncle Daniel." Zoe nodded beside him, tears running down her face. Jessica's mask cracked. She tried to interrupt, claiming Daniel had manipulated them, but the judge silenced her. "Ms. Evans," he said sternly, "you left your children for 6 months with minimal contact. The court must consider stability above all else." Jessica slumped into her chair as the ruling came. Temporary guardianship granted to Daniel Johnson for 6 months. Supervised visitation allowed for the mother. Daniel didn't celebrate. He simply exhaled quietly, almost guiltily. Jessica stood abruptly, eyes glassy, voice trembling. "You think this is over?" she said, stepping closer until they were face to face. Her tone was low, almost calm, but her words dripped with venom. "Watch me." She turned and walked out, heels echoing through the marble hallway, the sound fading but the threat lingering in the air long after she was gone. Lauren looked at Daniel, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you think she means it?" Daniel didn't answer. He just stared at the closed courtroom doors, the same chill running down his spine that had haunted him since the first knock on his door. Because deep down, he knew the truth. Jessica never made empty promises. Daniel didn't realize it yet. But "watch me" wasn't just a threat, it was the start of a nightmare that would push his family to the edge. "Watch me," those 2 words echoed in Daniel's head for days. He didn't know what Jessica meant, not exactly, but the look in her eyes when she said it told him everything. She wasn't giving up. She was waiting, watching, planning. For a while, things seemed calm, too calm. Jessica hadn't called, hadn't shown up, hadn't even sent a message. The court order was in effect, and Daniel thought maybe, finally, she'd accepted the reality that Tyler and Zoe were safe, that they were home. But silence, in Jessica's world, was never peace. It was strategy. A month after the court hearing, Jessica began her supervised visit. Every Saturday morning, Daniel drove the kids to the local community center, where a social worker would monitor their time together. At first, everything looked normal. Jessica brought snacks, board games, tried too hard to act cheerful, but Daniel noticed little things, questions that didn't belong. "Tyler, what's your uncle's bank called again?" she asked casually one afternoon while coloring with Zoe. "You know, the one he goes to every Friday." Zoe frowned. "Why?" Jessica smiled. "Oh, nothing, sweetie. Just wondering how grown-up you've all become. Maybe you could show me how you help him pay bills online." The social worker stepped in, redirecting the conversation. But Daniel saw the report later and felt a chill. He tried to brush it off. Maybe she was just curious. Maybe he was paranoid. But the next visit, Jessica asked if she could drop off gifts for the kids, a backpack and a small notebook. Lauren opened the notebook later that night and found something strange. The first few pages filled with questions written in Jessica's handwriting. What's the Wi-Fi password? What day does Uncle Daniel go to work? Where does he keep his safe? That's when Daniel knew this wasn't about the kids anymore. It was about control, power, and revenge. 2 weeks later, he decided to install a few small security cameras around the house, not out of fear, but out of instinct. Then, one Friday afternoon, he came home early and noticed the side gate unlocked. Lauren had been at work all day. The kids were at school. He checked the footage. There she was, Jessica slipping through the side yard, wearing a baseball cap, moving fast but deliberate. She didn't touch anything in the living room. Instead, she went straight for his office. Daniel watched as she opened drawers, flipped through papers, pulled out his file cabinet. She snapped photos with her phone, insurance forms, mortgage documents, even copies of the kids' birth certificates. Then she left, closing the door softly behind her. He froze. He didn't yell, didn't panic. He just sat there, watching the footage again and again, his hands shaking with quiet anger. That night, he called his lawyer. By morning, every password, every bank code, every online account was changed. He upgraded the home security, alerted the local police, and notified his bank about possible identity theft. 1 week later, he got a call. Mr. Johnson, the bank representative said, "We detected multiple failed login attempts on your joint savings account. Someone tried accessing it from a device registered in Phoenix, Arizona." Daniel's chest tightened. Phoenix, Jessica's last known address. When he confronted her through her lawyer, she denied everything. "I didn't touch his accounts," she said in a calm voice during mediation. Then she smirked. "Maybe the kids used my phone. You know how tech-savvy they are." It was infuriating, not just the lie, but how easily she said it, as if stealing, manipulating, deceiving were all part of some twisted game she believed she could win. The next custody review came faster than expected. The evidence spoke for itself. The unauthorized bank attempts, the security footage, the reports from the social worker. Jessica's visitation rights were revoked immediately. From that point on, she could only speak to the children through scheduled, supervised phone calls. She tried to stay composed during the hearing, sitting straight, chin high, pretending not to care. But when the judge read the final ruling, something in her broke. Jessica stood, trembling voice rising. "You all think I'm crazy," she shouted. "He's the thief. He's stolen everything from me, my kids, my life, my family." Her voice echoed through the courtroom, raw and jagged. The bailiff stepped closer, ready to intervene. Daniel didn't move. He just watched her, this person he once called his sister, unravel in front of strangers. As she was escorted out, she turned her head sharply toward him. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You haven't won, Daniel. Not yet." The days after the hearing were uneasy. Jessica started leaving voicemail messages in the middle of the night. Long, rambling, sometimes tearful, sometimes full of hate. "I hope you can sleep while destroying my life. You'll see. Don, you can't keep them from me forever." Then silence again, the kind that makes every creak in the floor sound like a warning. Lauren stopped letting the kids walk to school alone. Daniel double-checked every lock, every window. Zoe began having nightmares again. Tyler refused to talk about his mum at all. One night, Daniel found a note taped to his mailbox. No name, just 3 words scrawled in red ink. "You'll pay soon." He called the police again, but without direct evidence there was little they could do. They advised him to document everything, every message, every call, every incident. It was like living in a waiting room for disaster. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was Rachel, Daniel's cousin, one of the few relatives still in touch with Jessica. Her voice was shaky. "Dan, I don't know how to say this, but Jess is planning something. She's talking about leaving the state. She said she found a new school for the kids in Oregon. She's been using a fake name. She's looking for a rental near Portland." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "She's going to take them," he whispered. "Yeah," Rachel said quietly. "She said you'd never find her this time." That night, Daniel didn't hesitate. He drove straight to the police station, filed an emergency report, and applied for a permanent restraining order. His lawyer pushed the paperwork through the next morning, fast-tracking it for review. By the end of the week, the court granted it a permanent protective order forbidding Jessica from approaching Daniel, Lauren, or the kids in any way. It should have been over. It should have been relief. But deep down, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he'd only delayed the inevitable. Jessica didn't stop when the law told her to. She adapted. And this time, she'd gone quiet again. The kind of quiet that never meant peace. But before the law could truly stop her, Jessica disappeared, and what happened next, no one in the Johnson family would ever forget. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes, it's the sound right before something breaks. For weeks, Jessica's silence felt heavier than her presence. No calls, no messages, no notes left on the mailbox. Just nothing. Daniel didn't trust it. He kept expecting the next knock, the next outburst, the next storm. But this time, it never came. Then, one cold November morning, the phone rang. The voice on the other end wasn't hers. It was a police officer from a small town 2 hours north. "Mr. Johnson," the officer said, his tone careful, "we found a vehicle registered under your sister's name. It was abandoned off Route 17. Keys still inside. No sign of her." Daniel's stomach dropped. He felt a strange mix of dread and relief. He asked the only question that made sense. "Is she alive?" The officer hesitated. "We don't know yet. We're still searching the nearby woods, but there's no indication of foul play." After the call, Daniel sat in silence for a long time. Lauren came in, eyes full of worry. "What happened?" He told her everything. She didn't say a word, just placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "She's gone," he whispered, "and I don't even know how to feel about it." Days turned into weeks, and Jessica didn't resurface. The police eventually filed it as a missing person case, but leads ran cold. Her phone was off, her bank account untouched, her apartment empty. It was as if she had simply vanished. Daniel didn't tell the kids right away. Tyler overheard a conversation and asked one night, "Dad, is Mom dead?" Daniel froze. The word dad still startled him sometimes, even months later. He knelt beside Tyler and said softly, "No, buddy, we don't know where she is, but wherever she went, I hope she's safe." Tyler nodded slowly. "I just hope she's not mad anymore." Zoe leaned against him, whispering, "Can we still live here? Forever?" Daniel smiled faintly, pulling her close. "Yeah, sweetheart, you're home now." And for the first time, he meant it with absolute certainty. The legal process moved quickly after that. With Jessica missing and the restraining order still active, the court reviewed Daniel's petition for full custody. His lawyer presented records of schooling, medical care, and financial stability. The judge read through everything carefully before delivering the ruling. Full legal guardianship is hereby granted to Daniel and Lauren Johnson. Parental rights of Jessica Evans are suspended indefinitely until she can prove psychological and emotional stability. Lauren squeezed Daniel's hand. It wasn't victory, not in the way people think. It was survival. It was relief wrapped in sadness. When they left the courthouse that day, the air felt different, lighter, but tinged with something bittersweet. Daniel looked up at the cloudy sky and whispered to himself, "It's over." But even as he said it, a part of him knew it never truly would be. Not entirely. Months passed. Life began to look normal again, or at least, their new version of normal. Tyler started high school and made the basketball team. Zoe joined an art club and filled the house with sketches of sunsets and family portraits. In one of them, she drew 5 people, herself, Tyler, Lily, Lauren, and Daniel standing together under a golden sky. When Daniel asked her about it, she smiled shyly. "It's all of us," she said. "Our family." He noticed Jessica wasn't in the picture but didn't say anything. Some absences, he realized, speak louder than words. Lily loved having older siblings. The house was always a little louder now, more laughter, more movement, more life. Lauren often joked, "I used to clean up after 1 kid. Now I clean up after 3 teenagers." But her eyes always sparkled when she said it. There were hard days, of course. Nights when Tyler would stay up too late staring out the window, or when Zoe would wake from a bad dream calling for her mom. But they were healing slowly, quietly, beautifully. One spring afternoon, Daniel was invited to speak at a local family support group, not as a victim, but as someone who'd survived the kind of family chaos most people only read about. He hesitated at first. But Lauren encouraged him. "You've lived through something people need to hear," she said. So he went. Sitting in front of a small crowd of parents, he told their story, not in anger, but with quiet reflection. He didn't mention every ugly detail, just enough to make his point. At the end, someone asked, "Do you hate your sister for what she did?" Daniel paused. The question hung in the air. "No," he said finally. "I don't hate her. I used to. But hate keeps you tied to someone who's already let go. I just feel sorry for her." He looked down for a moment, then met the audience's eyes again. "Sometimes, family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up and stays." The room was silent for a moment before the applause started. It wasn't loud, but it was genuine. When Daniel returned home that night, the house was glowing with warm light. The smell of pancakes, Lily's favorite, filled the air. Tyler was teasing Zoe about her art supplies. Lauren sat by the window, smiling at the chaos she'd once feared would break them. Daniel stopped in the doorway, taking it all in. The laughter, the clatter of plates, the hum of everyday life. He sat down at the table, poured himself a cup of coffee, and looked at the three kids around him, each one carrying pieces of pain, resilience, and hope. He said softly, his voice almost breaking, "This is home." Lauren reached across the table, touching his hand. The kids looked up, smiling, not realizing how much weight those three words carried. The seasons changed. The police never found Jessica. Every now and then, a letter would arrive from somewhere far away, no return address, just a few words written in her familiar looping handwriting. "I'm sorry. Tell them I love them." Daniel never knew if it was truly her. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe forgiveness didn't need proof. He kept one of the letters in his desk drawer, unopened. Some things, he believed, were better left unread. In the end, life didn't go back to what it was. It became something new. Daniel learned that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the quiet strength of choosing peace when revenge would be easier. He learned that being a parent isn't about DNA, it's about presence, consistency, and love that doesn't run out when things get hard. And perhaps the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes protecting your family means letting go of the people who refuse to protect themselves. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Daniel once said in an interview years later, "It means you stop carrying the fire someone else started. You stop letting it burn your hands." He smiled faintly, looking at a photo of his family on the mantel. Lauren, Lily, Tyler, and Zoe, together, laughing, alive. The camera panned in slowly on that photo. Sunlight glinting off the glass. Daniel's voice echoed one last time, soft, steady, full of closure. Home isn't where you come from. It's where you're loved enough to stay. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people hurt you again. Real love is not blood, it's protection, presence, and the courage to choose what's right, even when it breaks your heart.